I hope that you're doing amazing wherever you are in the world. My name is Shikha, and I welcome you to my channel. As always, I'm so grateful that you're listening, subscribing, and commenting. I really appreciate the support. And in this one, I wanted to speak to you about sensitivity to noises and smells, but particularly to noises. This is something that I've noticed in a lot of INFJs that I speak to and constantly on Reddit boards and Instagram posts and things like that. This is something that I hear a lot from INFJs, that they are sensitive to noises and smells. I haven't particularly noticed a sensitivity to smell, but I know definitely that sensitivity to noises is one of my quirks that even my family is really irritated by me because of it. Constantly I'm telling them, the TV is too loud, or you're being too loud, or you're speaking too loudly, or this is too loud, or that is too loud. Constantly I'm running away from noises in my family, in my house, in my vicinity. Like, there's loads of construction going on in the past few days, and I've been wearing earplugs the entire day. It's been kind of hilarious because I'm sitting in bed or I'm sitting on my desk and I'm wearing earplugs, or I'm putting really loud music on so I don't have to actually hear what's going on outside, music that I can actually bear. Or I'll be sitting and going to sleep and I'll feel like it's too noisy, even though it's nighttime and there's really nothing going on except a few children playing outside. But even then, I'm like, I don't think I'll be able to go to sleep if this is the kind of noise level that's going to go on. And so I'll put on earplugs and I'll go to bed with earplugs. Now, I think a lot of people wear earplugs to bed, I think. I'm not really sure. There's a lot of noise pollution in cities nowadays, so I think it's pretty typical. I know when I was in Thailand, in Chiang Mai, I lived right next to a bar, which is kind of hilarious. It's ironic how I ended up living right next to a bar. Thai people are not that loud. In fact, they're actually really, really quiet, and they're actually very surprised when foreigners come in and start being loud and talking very loudly. Even when there's a bunch of them sitting around, having a conversation, or even when they get drunk, they don't necessarily get loud. They just start singing a lot. Which is funny because I was sitting, as I said, I was living right next to the bar, and at nighttime when they would drink a lot, they would just start singing a lot, which is pleasant enough because they never started yelling or shouting because they were drunk. That's okay. But in general, being in Thailand, there was motorcycle noises all the time, all throughout the night. There were motorcycles going past my window, or there's all this construction going on all the time. So in general, in Thailand, I had to wear earplugs as well when I was going to sleep. As I said, this is something that I'm constantly fighting with my roommates about. Mostly I live by myself because I don't want to fight with my roommates about it. I don't want to be like, well, I know you're watching this amazing movie and you're having a lot of fun, but could you turn it down a bit? I'm always doing that to my family. So what I do nowadays, instead of actually telling them to turn it down, is I just go to my room, which is unfortunate because it means that I'm spending very little time with my family, because most of the time what they like to do is watch TV very loudly, and which means that I can't actually be around it. And it's not something that I'm saying. I think INFJs don't really, we're not doing it because we want to be disharmonious, or we're not doing it because we want to pretend to be sensitive or pretend like we're something that we're not. Really, it literally is a health issue sometimes for us, because our sensitivity to noise gets so acute that I can literally feel a headache coming on. I can feel nauseous when there's too much noise around me. I literally start feeling sick from it. Unfortunately, as I said, we live in a very loud world. In general, there's always something going on. There's not only there's like construction noises, but there's birds chirping. And I know this is a weird thing, but even in Thailand, there were so many birds outside my window that even though it was a beautiful sound to hear, at some points it would get to be a little bit overwhelming because it was just so much noise. So obviously that in itself is also some kind of noise pollution. And then there's motorbikes, there's cars, there are highways. I think here in Toronto, we live right next to a highway. So there's always the noise of the highway traffic going past. Even though it's still far away enough that I shouldn't be able to hear it, I still do hear it. And it's kind of interesting because, I'll be sitting in my room and I'll hear my sister doing something in her room. And she is a little bit of a distance away from my room. And I'll be like, I hear you coughing. Are you sick? And she's like, well, how did you hear that? I was just coughing in my room in my bed. I was like, well, I heard it. And are you sick? Do you want me to get you some tea? Things like that happen all the time in my family, or with my sensitivity to noise. And I noticed that this is not, as I said, not just one INFJ or two INFJs. I've heard a lot of you guys say exactly the same thing. Maybe it's also related to, of course, our hypersensitivity. So we're hypersensitive not only to energies, but noise. Noise is a form of energy, but noises, we're sensitive to smells, we're hypersensitive. I mean, I'll be sitting here on this porch swing, and there's a cookie factory. I don't know, maybe a kilometer, 4 kilometers away, 3 kilometers, 2 kilometers away. And I'll be sitting here sometimes, and I'll be able to smell the cookies from the cookie factory. And I'm guessing the wind is blowing in the right direction. I have no idea, but I'll tell my sister, and she's like, I cannot smell a thing, right? So maybe again, as I said, it's hypersensitivity, it's hyper awareness, it's just the fact that we are maybe a little bit more present, maybe a little bit more still. We spend a little bit more time being quiet, that we are sensitive to all the different things that goes on around us. But in general, there's very few times where I'll be walking around or sitting in my room and listening to music or listening to something loud. Mostly, even YouTube videos that I watch, I put them on silent and put the closed captions on, because I cannot a lot of times stand not only the noise of the video, but also the voice of the person that's speaking, which is a terrible thing to say, I know. And so in general, as I said, a lot of what we do as INFJs is kind of geared towards reducing the noise levels in our lives. A very weird thing to work upon, but a lot of times when I am moving from place to place, I'll make sure that I carry earplugs with me. It's actually become one of my staples, especially because, as I told you guys before, I've stayed in many hostels. I travel a lot, and I'm constantly staying in hostels. Even though I usually try to get a private room, sometimes it's impossible. So I'm in a room where I'm sharing my bed, sharing a bed, or sharing the room with 2, 3 other women, mostly. And so sometimes they can be a little bit noisy. Mostly they're really quiet and good and gentle, but sometimes I do end up with women who are a little bit noisy, and so earplugs are definitely going to be a necessity in my journey. In general, though, even if I'm at home, I always carry earplugs. If I go anywhere, I'm always carrying earplugs as well. What if I end up in the car and my mom's chatting on the phone with a person extremely loudly? I have to make sure that I'm protected then. Or if I'm at Costco or wherever I would go, I don't go outside that often, but if I do, it's important to make sure, not only, as I said, because of the fact that it can be really nauseating to me just to hear the noises and sickening, in fact, but also it's just not good in general. I'd rather listen to the thoughts inside of my head or just be in peace, at stillness and silence, than listen to random noises that are useless and just out there uselessly. In general, as I said, though, one of my main dreams is to live in a place that's extremely quiet. So whenever I can, whenever I do get an opportunity to go to a cottage or to go to an area where, there is no noise pollution from the city, I take that opportunity in an instant. Even in Chiang Mai, I'm constantly going on hikes up the mountain to Doi Satep, because it's a Buddhist temple, and obviously it's a temple, so there's lots of tourists around. But if you go a little bit away from the temple and you go towards the forest area, it's very quiet and serene, and the only thing that you could possibly hear are monks chanting, and it's just amazing. And I just love going to places like that so I can just sit and be in silence. I'm not saying that I just want to be in silence all the time. As much as possible, the majority of the time, majority of my day, I spend in silence, and I know a lot of you guys do as well. I know the INFJs I speak to, they're constantly in their rooms by themselves, and they're making sure that they're not inundating themselves with too much noise, because again, there's a sensitivity there and causes them to feel sick or to feel unwell or just to feel in general, just a general dis-ease, which again is not conducive to your health. Again, what I wanted to do with this video is to let you know that it's normal. I think it's just one of those things that happens. It's one of those things that we have to get aligned with and be all right with, and to make sure that we control our environment so we don't have to deal with noise in general. I think that would be really, really helpful to us. But also, I was going to say that one of the things that I have to constantly fight against with people around me is to fight against the noise. My parents are always thinking that I'm making a big deal out of nothing. Well, then instead of actually staying in the noise, I'll just go to my room, close the door, and then put on earplugs and be in quiet, in silence, in stillness. At first, I used to actually feel bad about it. At first, I used to feel like, am I being overly facetious, or am I being overly weird, or am I just being like very picky, or am I just losing my mind? What's going on with me? I started doubting myself. But now I realize it's not something that I need to be worried about. It's not something that I need to. I'm just that's it. This is it. This is how I am, and this is what maybe you could even think of it as like a disability of sorts. You kind of think of it as a thing that's required. It's just something that you can't get away from. It's something that we need in order to be healthy. It's something that we need in order to be at the peak of our abilities. It's not something that we're asking for. It's not a big thing that we're asking for, really. I don't think. And as I said, in general, I don't ask most people to reduce the volume. I'll just leave the room as soon as it starts getting loud, and I'll go to my room and shut down the door and put on earplugs so that I can be in silence on my own. I'm not asking someone else to create that silence for me. I'm doing it for myself, right? So again, don't feel bad about it. Don't feel, if you are in that mode, if you are highly sensitive to noises, then don't feel like it's something that you're doing to fight with other people, or to create a negative atmosphere. You're doing it for yourself. So as long as you can, just do it for yourself in the most harmonious way possible. And basically that just means leaving the space when it gets too noisy. That's what it means for me, at least. I hope this is helpful. I hope I was able to explain myself to you. If you have any questions about this, comment below and I shall do a follow-up video. But I think this is a pretty straightforward topic. Again, let me know if you guys are sensitive to noises as well. I would love to know, because I always love knowing that I'm not the only one experiencing this madness. Again, thank you so much for watching, for being in my channel. I really appreciate your support, and I shall see you the next time around. Bye for now.